Okay. Good afternoon. All righty. Oh, why did I do that? That's the wrong one. There we go. All right, so this is the last video for Unit 5. I did go ahead and release this in the AP, assign the questions for these in the AP classroom. So after I finish this, you can go ahead and look at those. I also assigned the next unit, Unit 6. I'm not doing an end of unit test on 13 because you kind of answered it all already when you did the 5.17. So I will do another matching, not matching, a chart for you to do summarize advantages and disadvantages, but I'm not going to do a test for this. We're going to just skip right on to Unit 6 after this. All right, so on Friday, we'll look at 6.1 and 6.2 videos, but today we're just going to look at this one. Okay, what did I just do?
Most people are too lazy to do this, but it saves.
Hey everybody, it's Mr. Smeeds, and today we'll be covering topic 5.14, which is Integrated Pest Management, or
Hold on,
IPM.
that's the wrong one.
So Integrated Pest Management is a way to
That's
control
the
pests.
wrong one. It was, and we've already watched this. Okay, where'd you go? Okay, we're supposed to be watching this one.
Hey everybody, it's Mr. Smeeds, and today we'll be covering topic 5.13, which is reducing urban runoff. So sometimes we refer to urban runoff as stormwater runoff. We'll be using those terms kind of interchangeably today, but we'll be discussing the environmental consequences of stormwater runoff and also techniques to mitigate or reduce it. What we can see here is a picture of a rooftop garden, which is a great strategy that we'll talk more in depth about in today's video. Our objective today is to describe methods to mitigate urban runoff. Now, mitigate means to reduce. That's a really important APES vocab term we have to know. So we'll talk about solutions such as permeable pavement, planting trees in rain gardens, using public transportation, building up versus building
Oh, that's quick.
out. And then finally,
There must be the storm coming in my area because it's buffering a lot.
practice science skill we'll use at the end of today's video will be identifying a research method for an experiment. So first, what are the consequences of urban runoff? Why should we be so concerned about mitigating it? Well, the first one is that we're going to decrease groundwater infiltration. Remember, groundwater is a really important source of drinking water. And so when we decrease groundwater infiltration, that's a problem. And so we can look at this diagram here, which just reminds us that when we cover the ground with impervious surfaces, sidewalks, asphalt, concrete, parking lots, that's going to decrease the amount of water that can trickle down into the soil and recharge the groundwater. Another problem, though, is that all of this runoff that's created by the impervious surfaces will collect pollutants. These are harmful chemicals or other substances that are on our concrete, and it will get washed into something called a storm drain, and that storm drain empties generally directly into a local body of water, often without receiving any treatment. So if we look at this example here, we'll see things like pesticides, fertilizers, gasoline, sediments, oil, all of these things that fall onto our concrete, again, get carried into the storm drain by runoff and then into local bodies of water. So that's a problem. We'll look at some specific pollutants and their effects. First, we have salt, especially in Michigan and other cold weather states. We use a lot of salt on the road, but a lot of plants that live in our local bodies of water and insects that live there are intolerant, and salt can actually kill them. Next, we have sediments. So sediments are going to wash in. That's going to make the water more turbid. It's going to decrease the amount of sunlight that penetrates, make it harder for plants to photosynthesize and aquatic organisms to see. Then we have fertilizer. So we use fertilizer on our lawns and our industrial landscape. That's going to wash into local bodies of water, where it's going to create algae blooms. That blocks the sunlight, so other plants can't photosynthesize. And eventually, when those algae die and other plants die as well, we're going to have a hypoxia or decrease in oxygen as bacteria have to break down those dead organisms. Then we have pesticides. So we apply pesticides on our lawns a lot of times, or industrial landscape, or even agricultural fields. So that's going to wash into our local bodies as water as well. That can kill non-target species. And then finally, we have oil and gasoline. So these drip down from our cars. They wash down to the storm drain into the local body of water. And enough of that can suffocate fish by clogging their gills. And it can also decrease the amount of sunlight that gets into the water. And it can just be toxic to many aquatic species. Now we'll talk about a solution called permeable pavement. So permeable pavement is a specially engineered pavement that's going to allow precipitation to actually trickle through the pavement and reach the groundwater below it. So instead of running off the surface of the pavement, it can actually trickle through because the pavement has these large pores that are going to allow the precipitation to infiltrate it and eventually reach the soil beneath so that it can recharge groundwater instead of becoming runoff. This is a great thing because it decreases the runoff, so it's going to decrease the amount of pollutants that are carried into local streams and rivers, and it's going to recharge groundwater instead of forming that runoff. Another great benefit of this is it's going to decrease flooding. So cities are going to be less likely to flood if they have permeable pavement that can allow infiltration instead of runoff. One drawback we should be aware of, though, is that it is more expensive than standard concrete. Next solution we have is planting rain gardens and planting trees in cities. So rain gardens are just gardens planted in an urban area, typically surrounding a storm drain. So we can see one here in the middle of this photo, there's a storm drain, but then we have a bunch of soil and vegetation around it. The goal is to soak up a lot of the rainwater before it actually goes into the storm drain. So one, we reduce the total volume of stormwater that's actually created, but also the soil and the plant's roots can filter out some of the pollutants that may be in the stormwater. So not only are we creating less stormwater, we're hopefully creating cleaner stormwater. So we can see another example here of during a heavy rainfall event, a lot of this water is being captured by the rain garden instead of flooding the street or instead of going down storm drains. Again, this is going to decrease our chances of flooding when there's a heavy rain event. And then finally, this is really beneficial because it's also going to represent a habitat for local pollinator species. It helps create a sense of place. People like seeing these beautiful rain gardens, these nice additions to their streets. And then finally, the plants, especially if they're trees, are going to sequester some amount of carbon dioxide, which just helps mitigate climate change.
What's so funny? Bro! And
Next, we have public transit. So using public transit can reduce the amount of cars on the road, and that's a good thing because more cars on the road equals more pollutants on the road. So that's going to be motor oil and gasoline and other things that drip down from our engines onto the road. That's going to create less water going into our storm drains and less of these pollutants, our local water sources. So we have an image here that kind of helps us grasp what this looks like. We can transport the same number of people in this bus as we can with all of these cars on the road. So this is just a far more efficient way to transport people. It's going to reduce gasoline consumption. It's going to reduce all of the pollutants that get onto our roads. So these are things like motor oil, gasoline, even chemicals like antifreeze that leak down from our cars and little bits of our tires that break down. Another benefit here is that we're going to need fewer lanes on the road if more people are taking public transit. We're going to need fewer parking lots for all of these cars, so that decreases the total impervious surface area that we have to have in a city. So this is another big benefit because that's going to reduce stormwater. Those parking lots and those extra lanes could be replaced with rain gardens or trees or parks, areas that allow groundwater recharge. Another big benefit of using more public transportation is we're going to greatly decrease our CO2 emissions because there are fewer vehicles on the road. It's also going to decrease the urban runoff because, again, we don't need as many impervious surfaces, and it's going to decrease the pollutants that are on those impervious surfaces because there are fewer vehicles on the road. And then finally, it's going to decrease traffic, which is a really great benefit as well. No one likes sitting in traffic. And so I'll leave you with this great little graphic here, which says you are not stuck in traffic, you are traffic. So think about taking the bus, think about riding your bike instead. It really helps to reduce traffic, and it really helps to reduce the effects of urban pollution. And then finally, we have building up versus building out. So building vertically is going to decrease the total amount of impervious surface you have, which is going to decrease the amount of runoff. So we can take a look at an example here of Atlanta versus Barcelona. We've got virtually the same population, about 5.3 million, But Atlanta, because urban sprawl has been so prominent here, takes up 4,280 square kilometers. When we compare that to Barcelona, that's only 162 square kilometers. So there's a massive difference in the amount of impervious surface and the total amount of land that's taken up by these two cities. That's going to result in Barcelona having barely 10% of the CO2 emissions per person from transportation, because they're going to use effective transportation systems. They can walk most places. And so this is just a far more efficient method of building. And it's a far more effective way of reducing urban runoff than allowing urban sprawl to take place. We can also combine vertical building or building up with aspects of green infrastructure like green roofs or rooftop gardens. So we can put plants on our buildings, and that's going to allow them to soak up even more rainwater. It's also going to create habitats for local pollinator species. And remember that plants, especially trees, are able to take in air pollutants into the stomata or their leaf pores. And so that's going to help them filter things like particulate matter and nitrogen dioxide out of the atmosphere. And that's going to be really beneficial for air quality. So not only can we reduce urban runoff with these green infrastructure components that get added onto vertical building design, but we can also have cleaner air. That's going to lower healthcare costs. It's going to reduce urban smog. And so this is a really beneficial addition that can be combined with building up. So our suggested skill for practice FRQ 5.13 today is identifying a research method or design for an experiment. And so take a look at this practice experiment here. I want you to design an investigation to measure the relationship between the number of trees in a city and the amount of stormwater runoff the city produces. So you want to propose a hypothesis. Remember to follow that increasing or decreasing the IV will increase or decrease the DV format that we've talked about. Then I want you to outline a basic procedure. Then I want you to identify the independent and dependent variables. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today. Don't forget to like this video if it was helpful. Subscribe for
All right. So one of the things we have to do before you take your exam is to go over the scientific method, because in order to answer a question like that, you need to be familiar with all of the parts of your scientific method and how they are important. This, believe it or not, is how you do research papers when you go to college. You have to come up with your research theory is your hypothesis, and then the procedure. All the scientific method is how you do a research paper in college. Okay, so we're going to go over that probably closer to exam time, so that you are familiar with how to create an investigation. Okay. All righty. So that being said, um, I'm going to let you spend the rest of the time in the AP classroom. So there, I did open up 5.13 for you to answer those questions. Again, 5.13 is the last unit that we are going to do in for Unit 5, and then we're going to move on to Unit 6. So I just looked at my Go Guardian and realized I didn't close down the other class. I'm looking for you guys, and I'm like, why are they in somebody else's class? All right, there you go. All right, so everybody should be in AP classroom. I will be in AP classroom so I can get all the scores that you have there. Use this time to, again, if you, only a couple of you need to finish things that need to be finished, but everybody needs to do 5.13 for sure. AP classroom. I don't know about you, but this day has gone very quickly for me. I'm getting a message about yesterday. It said on April 22nd, we experienced a problem that caused intermittent access and usage issues. This problem was fixed. We apologize for the disruption. So check to make sure that whatever you did yesterday is actually showing up. I don't think any of you had problems working while you were in there, but just check to make sure that what you feel like you did yesterday, you actually got it scored. Okay. If you did it, why isn't it scored? Okay. There's nobody who's present. Also, I want to remind you when you're writing answers to questions, like today you only have the multiple choice questions. When you have to do an FRQ type question, use as many vocabulary words as you can. What was the word he kept using in the video? That referred to surface area. I forget what the word is right now. It's left my mind. I meant to write it down, but permeable surfaces. So you need to think about using that word. This means that if you have a lot of cement on top of the ground, the water can't get through. So you need to think about surface area as far as permeable surfaces, as far as water being able to return back to groundwater. One of the activities he talked about that you might, when I asked you all to think about how you might change your lifestyle, girls don't do it as much, but guys, they change their oil in their front yard. And if you change your oil at home, or somebody in your house changes the oil on their car at home, a lot of times if they don't catch the oil in a collecting pan properly, it gets into your soil in your backyard or front yard or on the pavement in front of your house. And again, that oil washes into um, the drain water, and goes into, like he said, things that go in the drain go directly to a body of water. They're not going to the water treatment system. So you need to think about the things that you do with that. So he gave a lot of, that particular video had a lot of environmental things that you need to think about changing. What you do with your lawn litter and how you fertilize your grass and that sort of thing. All of that goes into our water supply. So yes, I did. And I'm about to write, I'm grading your, the one that I have to actually grade. So I'm doing yours, and Kamari, I'm doing yours. And then I'll put those grades in the grade book and as soon as I finish these.
So did I do everything right? Like all the right assignments? My computer's acting crazy.
Yes, you did. So like I said, the only thing that I'm missing now is the one I'm grading, because I have to actually read each one and add the points for that. So yes, you're not missing anything. And I'll know better when I put it in the grade book. But on my little piece of paper here, I filled in all the boxes. So you're good. Okay. And I said all of that to say, make sure you are using all the right vocabulary words, because they have external graders and they are looking for key terms. As far, even when I'm looking at this, it tells me, did the writer use this word? Did they use this term? And that's what makes your answer right or wrong, is if you included certain vocabulary words. So please make sure that when you're answering these questions, I don't know yet, I'm not finished. um, it just was something that every once in a while I'm going to try to make sure that you have pointers on how to take the test properly, so that when it comes to mine, I have to let it come out before I forget. All right, I'm going to stop talking, finish grading these papers, because Gabby wants me to get this done. All right, if you are all caught up, make sure you look at the Earth Day reflection question. And I think for everybody who's here. Okay. Ariana, you need to get caught up on your AP classroom. But everybody else who's here, and Jada, you need to get caught up at AP classroom. Everybody else should be looking at your Earth Day reflection. Okay. All right, Kamari, you're up to date now too. I think you guys are going to make great global citizens. Okay, folks, time is just about up. If you have no questions for me, y'all have a great rest of your afternoon. All right. Kamari, not only are you all complete, you have the highest score right now. Good job. Good job.